Hey YouTube, what's happening? It's Richard, founder of Short-Term Rental University and professional real estate developer. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Clint Coons, who's a co-founding partner at Anderson Business Advisors. We just filmed an episode on how to think about your taxes in the short-term rental space. If you haven't seen that, please go check it out. It's really helpful. And now we're going to turn our attention to something else that Clint and Anderson Business Advisors are specialists in, which is asset protection. We work really hard. We want to make sure that all of our assets are protected. We welcome people from all over the world who have different levels of experience and knowledge about stuff and slip and falls and all this like awful nightmare stuff. Clint and Anderson Advisors are going to help us sleep well at night, knowing that not only are we doing the best stuff that we can from a hosting perspective and saving as much in taxes as possible, but also keeping and protecting our assets from potential liabilities and people like suing us and so on. So thank you very much for joining us, Clint, and please let us know what we need to think about.
Oh, there's so much you need to think about when it comes to being a real estate investor. It all comes down to liabilities. I mean, let's face it, there's way too many attorneys out there, and there's people that have been conditioned that if you want to get paid, why work yourself when you can take someone else's assets and benefit from their hard-earned, the efforts that they put forward to build up their portfolios. And so there's a lot of things you can do, or actually there's a few things you can do that will really help protect you. And there's simple strategies that so many real estate investors, they just don't think about because they fall victim to this. People will tell you the only thing you need is insurance and you're going to be taken care of. Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, I've been working for 20 years with real estate investors, and I've heard time and time again how people were told all they needed was insurance, only to find out it didn't cover them when this one harm occurred, or possibly that it went beyond their policy limits and they lost everything because of the nature of the claim. So this idea that insurance is the end-all be-all when it comes to asset protection is really a falsehood. It's perpetuated by people who do not know any better. Unfortunately, they're not real estate investors themselves, and so they haven't been exposed to the level of clientele that we have at Anderson, because we work nationwide. We've worked with over 17,000 real estate investors across this country to put together plans. And so during that time, I mean, when we run our workshops every week, 100 and 150 people are coming through them, there you get exposed to a lot of situations where people have lost things. So what should you be doing then if you're a real estate investor? What's the first thing you should do when it comes to asset protection for rental real estate? Well, the first thing you do is, number one, is I would say place properties, real estate in a LLC. All right, so you want to place each property, by the way, in a separate limited liability company. Because if you put groupings of properties into one LLC, if something goes wrong with one of those, then you've risked everything. I mean, it's not uncommon. I'll see somebody will come to me with a structure like this. So I've created an LLC here, and I'll have 3 properties inside of it, just like this. And they'll say, I'm protected. I'll say, from what? They'll say, well, if anything happens on my properties. Well, you're correct. If anything happens on your properties, here's you down here. If something happens up here, you're protected. They won't be able typically to sue you. But here's what's not protected. Properties number 1 and number 2, because they're going to sue the limited liability company. And anything held by that LLC is now at risk. Let's assume that you were trying to sell property number 1. All right, you've got entered into a contract for sale on that property. Well, if somebody's bringing a claim against your LLC because of what happened with property number 3, the first thing the aggressive attorney is going to do, or actually any basic attorney should know how to do this, they're going to file a lis pendens on all of your assets to tie them up so you can't sell them. So that's going to screw up this deal that you thought you were entered into, and you're going to be able to close on it. Not anymore, because you've tied them all up. So what we want to do is separate out properties into separate limited liability companies like this, so that each LLC is separate from one another. So if you lose something, then it's only that property right there. That's the only thing you stand to lose. So place real estate in an LLC, more particularly, place each property in its own limited liability company for maximum asset protection. Now, we don't have time to go into how these things should be taxed, but that's really important as well, how you structure that from a tax standpoint to make your tax returns look better. But that's issue number 1. Issue number 2, all right, conduct your activity. You know, what I mean by that is your active business activity through an entity. through an entity. Now, typically that entity that we set up for this active activity, I like to set up corporations for that. And the reason why is we want to limit our risk exposure. We do not want to be personally liable if something goes wrong with one of the assets that we're managing. So here's a typical structure that we'll set up for someone. We'll create a corporation right here. And this corporation is what we're going to call their active business. So for many people that we work with, they're making really good income from their short-term rentals. And so we'll structure their property in a separate LLC down here, and we'll have the corporation sublease the property from the LLC. So the corporation subleasing the property, meaning this, or leasing the property from this LLC, and then it's subleasing it out, of course, on the short-term rental market. So what you're doing here through this strategy is that you're keeping the property separate from the activity of the rentals, number one. So it's separate down here. So if somebody sues, the corp's going to take the hit. Number two, what you're going to pick up on this is that you become an agent or an officer of your corporation. So you're not the one dealing with the individual. Your corporation is the one dealing with the individual. And unless they can show that you were grossly negligent or there was fraud involved in it, then the corporation is designed to protect you from any claims that are brought against that corp. I mean, they could come from neighbors. Let's say you have a property and you have you thought you were renting it out to 4 people. It turns out it was 40 people. They come there, they trash your house and they trash the neighbor's house. They jump in their pool and they throw soap in it and they create all this damage. Well, who are they coming after? Right? They're going to come after the company that rented out that property. Well, you don't want to be personally liable. You want your corporation to take the hit, not you personally. So that's an important aspect here, protecting yourself. And number 3, okay, protect your profits. All right? Protect your profits. The money that you're generating from your activity, the biggest mistake you can make is you're putting that in your own personal bank account, your own savings account. You see, when we think about asset protection, many people grasp this, that when I'm renting property out to someone, they can hurt themselves on the property, they can hurt other people on the property, they can damage the property, they can damage other people's property. But we don't think in terms of protecting our property from us, the things that we can do to create risk for that. Because remember, at the end of the day, you're one of the greatest liability generators you have for your assets because you do things. You're out there, you're driving around, you have kids that do stupid stuff. That's what we call them children. And that all rolls back up onto you and you become responsible for your actions and those of individuals with whom you have to take care of. So if somebody sued you personally, the last thing we want to do is risk our profits or our real estate from that in that lawsuit. So what we tell people is with your profits, do not keep a massive savings account. Do not keep a massive checking account. Put those funds in a separate limited liability company here. And this LLC should be one that has what we call charging order protections or charging order protected entity, a COPE entity. And many times I like to set it up so it's anonymity compliant as well, so no one knows that you have it. So if they don't know that you have it, they don't know they can take it from you. They wouldn't be able to anyways because it has charging order protections here. But this is where your savings, your investable cash should reside. So it's always protected from your personal threats. Now, you're in control of this entity, so whenever you need it, you can pull it out and you can put it to use buying other property. But while you're not using it, it remains protected in this special type of limited liability company. And these are typically set up in certain jurisdictions that provide charging order protections or anonymity compliancy as well. So those are the 3 main things that I look at when it comes to providing asset protection. And then again, it can grow out from there. But that's what I would do because so many of these different ways here is how people typically get punched and they find, hey, I'm involved in this lawsuit and all these assets are at risk. And at that point in time, there's nothing we can do for you. We can't go back and unring the bell. So you want to make sure you get protected ahead of time. And the other thing about having strong asset protection in your overall structures is that you become less of an attractive target. You see, attorneys, they want to go after people that have what I call low-hanging fruit, that have a lot of assets in their own name. And if you've taken your assets and you've structured them properly, you become a more difficult target for you. You reduce the amount of recovery that attorney can obtain with their judgment. So then it brings up settlement offers to you. I mean, because let's face it, if something did happen and you're responsible for it, we're not saying I don't have a moral obligation to make someone whole, but I'm not in this to make sure that their attorney profits handsomely from a mistake that was made by me or someone that works for me. So that's why you put these entities in place, and so it puts parity back into the scales of justice.
Makes perfect sense. And I just want to share with the viewers that first example that Clint gave us about thinking that you've got insurance and that it's going to cover everything. I spent over 5 years in the courtroom drama, and for those of you that have never been involved in a lawsuit like this, it's not fun whether you're right or you're wrong, the case is on your side, the law is on your side. It's still emotionally taxing, and people say things and behave in certain ways, and you just want to avoid that altogether. But I spent 5 years of my life trying to get my insurance company, who cashed all of my premium checks, by the way, willing to cash my premium checks. I turned to them and said, we just got sued, it was a slip and fall, it was completely bogus, but they tried to get out from under it and give me all the reasons why they weren't there for my insurance. I didn't give them the postcard that I got in the mail. They looked at every single thing and said, you know what, you don't have insurance. And so we spent 5 years in the courthouse just trying to get insurance that I'd been paying for. And my basic premise was, wait a minute, isn't this what I'm paying you for? And they were like, well, no. So I don't rely on insurance. I mean, I obviously have insurance. I get the best insurance I can. It's important that you have insurance that knows you're doing short-term rentals. Like, that would be an immediate flag if you have personal insurance and you're running it as a business, for instance. So I very much agree with that whole concept. And then I think you're completely correct in explaining to people, not only are we trying to protect our assets from lawsuits, but we also have to protect ourselves if we're sued and our assets, right? It's both ways. And most of the time, people look at it one way or the other. Like, they'll never get to that asset. But that's if something happens in that asset. What if something happens away from that asset, like I said, or like you said, Clint, you're driving a car, God forbid, you hit a patch of ice and you hit somebody and they're now in real damage. If you're not properly protected, that little car insurance thing might affect your business and your short-term rentals in different states all across, the country, even though they had nothing to do with the accident. People are going to sue you for anything that they can get their hands on. So I think that this...
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just think that this approach is very sound.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this in action before. About a year ago, a client of mine sent me an email, and she was looking for assistance. She has this $2.5 million judgment against a couple of real estate guys, and she hadn't been able to collect on it. And she'd been pursuing them for a couple of years. I think she received $15,000. And I said, all right, well, do they have any asset structures? Do you know anything about it? She goes, oh, yeah, I've got a diagram of all their assets. I said, well, send it on over. And she sent over this structure diagram that had all these boxes on it and arrows going this way, that way, boxes over here, and they're all LLCs and corporations. I took one look at it and I said, you're right. You're not going to collect against it. First, I wanted to make sure it wasn't our client, of course, but I said, yeah, you're not going to be able to get anything here because of the way they set themselves up. And I know it's unfortunate for you in what you're owed, but that's why people set up these structures, is to protect themselves.
Great. And so how do you get started with something like this? Is there an onboarding? Or, I mean, it's obviously a very individual, personalized approach. So what process do you and Anderson put together so that people can learn more?
Yeah, so it's, as you stated, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to planning. Knowing where you're investing, how much money the property is going to be making, the states in which you live, where you live, is there a debt on the property? All this needs to be factored in putting together a strong asset protection structure. And so what we offer people that are part of Short-Term Rental University is we offer you a free strategy session. So watching this video right now, you can go and register for that, and we'll sit down with you and we'll design out a blueprint for you. Typically, I charge $750 for a strategy session. This is a free offer for you to make sure that you're setting things up the right way. And maybe you don't have the assets today, but you know what you can grow into. And so when you're looking at taking down that next deal or your first deal, you know what type of structure it should be set up in, so you do it the wrong way and we don't have to go back in and fix things.
Thank you so much for extending that to our followers and viewers, and I really appreciate all that. We'll obviously include the link in the description below, and hopefully people will contact you, take you up on that offer, and learn how to protect all of their hard work and their assets. And by the way, it's not just work and hard assets for you, it's for your legacy and for your estate and for your children and your grandchildren and so on, right? Like, if I just take a $5 million loss on one asset or a pool of assets, my future generations are adversely affected massively. So even if I'm still okay and I'm still going to the ball game and driving a nice car and everything's fine for me, it's not enough, right? Like, we have to be really prudent and thoughtful about all of the things that really matter to us, and asset protection is critically important, and it's something that I've personally done for years. It can be very complex and convoluted. It's somebody you want to work with, a professional who has that knowledge. Don't try and do it yourself, because if you try and do it yourself, and you can go to whatever, LLC.com or something on the internet and do it. But trust me, you want to work with a professional, because when it really matters, it has to be right. It can't just be like, well, I have an LLC, and then somebody figures out how to pierce that.
That's right.
So, Clint, any other final thoughts before we thank you and encourage everybody to click on the link in the description?
Just that, yeah, definitely get the strategy session sooner rather than later, because deals come at you quick. And when you find that opportunity, the last thing you want to be doing is struggling trying to figure out, how should I take title? Because I hear this a lot from people. You know, I didn't move forwards on a deal. I lost a deal because I didn't know how I should buy it, an LLC, corporation in my own name. Listen, that is not a problem for you if you have a game plan in place, and that will not be an impediment to stop you from growing your wealth.
Can I ask you just one question that's a little bit down the rabbit hole? Do you have any thoughts on, what are they, like series LLCs or multi-class LLCs? Is that a way to help with some of this multiple LLC needs, or do you just generally avoid the series LLC?
No, we actually set up series LLCs in the appropriate jurisdiction where they're recognized. And so you have about 14 states now that recognize the series LLC. And if you happen to reside in one of those states, that's a valid option for you to set up. Now, of course, it's going to depend on the nature of your business, the type of real estate that you hold. But we set these up routinely for our clients that are operating in those particular states for the appropriate types of assets.
Amazing. Okay, well, Clint, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. If anybody would like to learn more, take advantage of the free consultation and strategy session and see if it fits you. And no matter what you do, get protected, stay smart, stay outside of like people's reach, because that's really important. We're all going to have little episodes that happen. It's a cost of doing business, but as long as you're properly protected and you've got strong asset protection in place, you can live and move on for another day and continue to grow. So thank you so much, Clint, and thank you at Anderson Business Advisors. We appreciate your time very much. I'd love to hear your comments below, friends, so go ahead and do that. And please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, Clint. Have a great day.
Thanks, Richard.
All right, be well. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks so much for watching that video. I just want to share with you that the HostSaver one-click website tool is now live. Like, people are on it, they're using it all the time, and we really want to encourage you to take control of your financial future by building your own brand and building your own business and getting off the dependency of the platforms. Take charge and control of your own future and develop relationships with your clients, the people that have come and stayed in your home. Tell them about discounts or specials that you have. Tell them that you expanded. Tell them anything that you want. Write blogs and start to get your own traction, right? Attract your own tribe using your own website. This is what businesses do. It's 2020. The time is now for people like me and you to build our own website and become platform agnostic. So go ahead and click in the description below to register for the HostSaver. One click and you have your own custom, absolutely gorgeous, works flawlessly website. Can't wait to see you there. Let's go, friends.